What are my thoughts on the Knicks offseason and signing Jalen Brunson? Well, obviously, those two things go hand in hand. I would first like to comment on the signing of Jalen Brunson. At first, I didn't think this was a good move by the Knicks. I thought this was an overpay, and it could still bite them in the ass later on, depending on how Jalen Brunson performs. But this could be a good value contract if he lives up to the expectations and he's just decent. I'm just going by today's market value for these types of players. Player like Jalen Brunson, if he can get you 16 to 20 points consistently a game, will generate, unfortunately, 4 years, 100 million type of dollar deal on the open market. In his case, 110 million. So somewhere in that range, from 100 to 120 million. These guys get overpaid by a lot now just to put up those numbers. So if you're judging by market value, this could be a solid deal for the Knicks. I looked at Jalen Brunson's stats, and one thing that stood out to me was his efficiency the last 2 years. Last 2 years, he's shot overall from the field above 50%, which is very good for a small guard. It means that he's able to get efficient buckets, and he's very good at selecting good shots. He makes smart decisions, which is what you want in a small guard. You don't want a guy who's jacking up a bunch of shots but is inefficient. So at least he has that going for him. I'll give him that. He's also a very good three-point shooter when you look at his stats. Last year he shot close to 38% from the field. I believe it was around there. The year before he shot above 40%. So he's a pretty good three-point shooter, which is important if you're a small guard in this league. That adds to the Knicks. One thing I would say that's concerning about Jalen Brunson is that he's not a good playmaker from what I've seen. He's more like a scoring first guard, but I've heard people argue that he did have the opportunity to be a playmaker in Dallas because Luka Doncic was the playmaker. He was a ball dominant guy. For his career, from what I've looked at, he's never averaged more than 4 assists per game. Last year was his career high. It was something like 4.5. I don't remember the number precisely. The Knicks' hope is that with him running the offense that he will become a better playmaker. He has the ability to become a good playmaker, and he will make things easier for their two best players in RJ Barrett and Julius Randle. That he will open up the doors for those guys to be even better, which goes to what these guys are going to produce next year in RJ and Julius Randle. Last year, both of them were terrible from an efficiency standpoint. Julius Randle shot 41% from the field. RJ Barrett shot 40% from the field, which is really bad for both of them because I always have this rule: if you're going to score 20 points or more in this league, you got to shoot above 45% at least to be efficient and not to be a detriment to your team offensively. So both of them, even though they averaged 20 points a game last year, they were a detriment to their team because they weren't efficient enough. They had to shoot better. So I think Knicks fans are hoping RJ Barrett will make that next step or take that next step into becoming a legit star in this league. We'll see if he can do it. I think part of the hope is that Jalen Brunson will get easy buckets for him, which will allow him to take off. I also think Knicks fans want to hope that Julius Randle returns to his all-star form, what he was in his first year with them, I believe. So they're hoping that he'll go back to what he was the year before. Now it'll be interesting to see if he can return to that. I'm not sure if he can. Teams, after seeing what happened to him in the playoffs last year against the Hawks, they started using the same strategy the Hawks used against him in that playoff series back in 2021, and he suffered for it. I've heard Knicks fans say that him being a playmaker is what hindered him this year, that he's not supposed to be primarily a playmaker, and that by getting Jalen Brunson, it will open up the doors for him to have a better season and it'll help him return back to form. So that'll be interesting to see. I'm not sure if he will, but we'll see. The other player I like to keep an eye on the Knicks is Obi Toppin, or Obi Toppin as they say. He put up some really good numbers in limited playing time. I think he averaged close to 10 points on above 50% shooting in only 17 minutes per game. To me, he kind of reminds me of Mari Stoudemire. I'm not saying he's going to become a Mari Stoudemire, but he has that real quickness, that athletic ability just to run down the court very fast. He's very quick, very athletic. I haven't seen much of his shooting abilities. Granted, I haven't watched that many Knick games, but I think the question mark is, can he consistently hit jump shots? If he can, then he can become possibly a 20-point scorer in this league. there's a chance that can happen, but it's not a given. Also, I think another thing that can hinder his development is that he's playing behind Julius Randle. So he's going to get just limited minutes. I don't know if Tibbs is going to increase it or if he's going to give him a bigger role. I don't know how you do it with Julius being on this team. Just I don't think you can play both of them at the same time. They're both defensive liabilities, I feel, together. So that it'll be interesting. Mitchell Robinson is a guy the Knicks re-signed, and I thought they got him for decent market value. He to me he's a poor man's DeAndre Jordan. He's he's not as good as DeAndre Jordan when it comes from a basketball IQ standpoint, which is funny because DeAndre was not the smartest guy, but defensively he makes a lot of dumb decisions. He commits a lot of dumb fouls. If you're a Knicks fan, you hope he can improve on that, but I don't know how you can improve on IQ. Usually, if you don't have it when it comes to IQ, you never really get it. That's something that they'll keep an eye on. Knicks also have a solid young player coming off the bench in Emmanuel quickly. To me, I never see this guy becoming a star. I think he'll always be somewhere between a 10 to 16 point player at best. He's a very solid spark plug off the bench. I think that's his role. That'll be his role for pretty much his whole entire career. There's the situation now with the Knicks starting shooting guard. They don't want to bring back Evan Fournier. I've heard that they want to get rid of him and they want to replace him with either Grimes or Cam Reddish as the starting shooting guard on their team. That's an interesting situation to watch. Grimes, Reddish, both are very unproven, so it's hard to say if they will impact the Knicks in a positive way. There's just too small a sample size for both those players, but it's one of those things we'll see what happens. When I look at the Knicks team as a whole, even with this just a Jalen Brunson, I think at best this team is an 8 seed, maybe a 7 seed if they get lucky with other teams getting injured in the East. But I don't see anything beyond that. But my prediction is this team is going to be the ninth or 10th seed. So that's the way I see it playing out for the Knicks. This is what I would call a decent offseason for the Knicks. They didn't make any stupid moves in the sense of really doing a bad trade or grossly overpaying a player. Obviously, the jury's still out on Brunson, but if he puts up the numbers he put up in Dallas during his final year there, then I think they'll get fair value from this contract with him. So we'll see. All right, thanks for listening.